August 28th, 1963. On that day in Washington, D.C., was delivered one of the greatest addresses in the history of the American Republic. It was delivered by arguably the greatest non elected political leader in the history of the American Republic. I would like to play part of that speech for you right now. Today is June 29th, 2023. It's almost 60 years to the day that Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. And the United States Supreme Court has issued a ruling that has helped America take a huge step toward achieving Dr. King's dream. If you don't know what I'm talking about, hang on. I'll explain all that in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Today, the Supreme Court handed down one of the last of the most highly anticipated decisions of the term. Cases and their decisions involving the question of whether affirmative action should be used in admission policies for higher education in this country. Now, there were two cases. One came from Harvard, one came from University of North Carolina. Now, I want to set this up by giving a brief definition of what affirmative action is, and then from there go to the news article that talks about the case, and then give my thoughts on the whole thing. So let's go over and take a peek at Wikipedia. And, I have my criticisms of Wiki, but, on this case, I don't think they gave a bad definition. So, what is affirmative action? Affirmative action, also known as positive action or positive discrimination, involves sets of policies and practices within a government or organization seeking to include particular groups based on their gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in the areas in which such groups are underrepresented, such as education and employment. Historically and internationally, support for affirmative action has sought to achieve goals such as bridging inequalities in employment and pay, increasing access to education, which is applicable here, promoting diversity, and redressing past wrongs, harms, or hindrances. Now, remember that last phrase because we're going to come back to it. Redressing apparent past wrongs, harms, or hindrances. Okay, that's the generally accepted definition of what affirmative action is. And it's been in existence really since the 1960s with an executive order by John Kennedy toward federal hiring, and it's just sort of expanded out from there. What the Supreme Court did today was overturn a case from back in 2003 called Gettr v. Bollinger, which said at the time, yes, colleges can use race as a factor in determining who should be let in and admitted to their universities. The irony of it is, in a 5-4 decision, Sandra Day O'Connor was the swing vote. That's not necessarily the irony. It was her comment at the time that was the most ironic. She went on to make the statement, in her opinion, that it would probably be another 25 years and this country wouldn't have affirmative action in higher education anymore, either because it would be struck down or we'd reach the point it was no longer necessary. Sandy had the right idea. She was just off by a few years. So having set the table, let's take a look at an article from the Washington Times. And this gets really interesting. Written by two very young and aspiring authors named Stephen Dinan and Alex Sawyer. Headline: Supreme Court rules race-based affirmative action is unconstitutional. Getting into their article, race-infused affirmative action programs violate the Constitution's guarantee of equal treatment, the Supreme Court ruled Thursday in a pair of monumental decisions striking down the policies used by major colleges and universities to try to add more Black and Hispanic students to their ranks. The ruling doesn't ban the mention of race in student applications or block a school from evaluating a candidate's experiences with race, either as a personal hurdle or inspiration, as part of the admissions decision. The court said schools can no longer defend policies that claim to try to find the right racial mix of students for an incoming class. Such policies reduce students to the color of their skin, the justices said in a 6-3 ruling. Chief Justice Roberts, writing the key opinion, said students must be treated on the basis of their experiences as an individual and not on the basis of race. Quote, many universities have for too long done just the opposite, and in doing so, they have concluded, wrongly, that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice, the Chief Justice wrote. Reading a little bit further into the article, there's one more quote from Roberts that I think is very, very telling. And it basically goes like this. The entire point of the Equal Protection Clause is that treating someone differently because of their skin color is not like treating them differently because they are from a city or a suburb or because they play a violin poorly or well, the Chief Justice wrote. And I think that's very important. There are certain factors that a college can consider, but to say that, you do it on the basis of race violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, that all people should be treated equally, regardless of the color of their skin. Now, there is one more point that I'll take from this article, and it's a concurring opinion from Associate Justice Clarence Thomas. And given a lot of what he's gone through over the years, I think this is very poignant. Quote, while I am painfully aware of the social and economic ravages which have befallen my race and all who suffer discrimination, I hold out enduring hope that this country will live up to its principles so clearly enunciated in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, that all men are created equal, are equal citizens, and must be treated equally before the law, Justice Thomas wrote in a concurring opinion. Okay, let's get into this. As you might imagine, I have never thought it wise on the part of this country to set up a system whereby we are going to try to right the wrongs of the past by creating a perverse wrong to do so. Here's what I'm getting at. Go back to that definition of affirmative action, that it's created for the purpose of redressing perceived wrongs done in the past. There's a very simple principle that I was taught a long time ago. You do not punish the sons for the sins of their fathers. In other words, regardless of what's happened in the past, the generation that you presently deal with is the generation that you deal with. You don't deal with them on the basis of what their dad or their granddad did, which kind of gets to an interesting point, and it's expressed brilliantly in an interview between Morgan Freeman and Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace interviewed Morgan Freeman when Wallace was working for 60 Minutes, and this was some years ago. And they got on the subject of Black History Month, and I want to play the clip. It runs about 1 minute, but I think it's extremely instructive. Take a listen to this. It's a very good point.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
You want one?
No.
All right. I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
That's probably one of the most profound things I've ever heard. It's simple and powerful. How does America get over the racial hurt? How do we move on past what's been done? you just stop talking about it, and you don't look at men and women on the basis of the color of their skin. You do what Dr. King called for. You look at them based on the content of their character. And that's why I wanted to tie Dr. King's speech into the news today. I think both of these things are very poignant. And honestly, I think this decision by the Supreme Court starts moving us toward what Dr. King was trying to achieve and what he was talking about almost 60 years ago. Now, as you can imagine, there were people that were not happy about this decision. And I want to show you a tweet that to me sums up brilliantly the position of people on the left. And I've got a few things to say about it. This comes from our friend Simon Atiba from Africa News Today. Take a look at this. White female Democrat and former field organizer to elect Joe Biden to the White House, Erica Marsh, writes, quote, "Today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on Black people. No Black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system, which is exactly why affirmative action-based programs were needed. Today's decision is a travesty." Okay. Miss Marsh, I'm going to pull the old man card here for a second, and I'm going to point out some things to you. Number one, to make the argument that minorities cannot succeed in a merit-based society is probably one of the most insulting things that you can possibly say. Do you not realize how denigratingly wrong you are? You have just put down African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, and you're saying that if it's not for a government program, they'll never achieve anything because they'll never get there on the basis of their own hard work and their own merit. If what you're saying is true, explain to me the success of any of the following individuals: Jackie Robinson, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Dr. Thomas Sowell. I could sit here and go on and on and on and on. Maya Angelou, with names of individuals who have risen to great heights in this country. And they did it at a time when political leadership was trying to keep them down, before the days of affirmative action. They achieved what they became without government help. Oh, they had to go a long way to get there, but they traveled that road and they got to the destination they wanted to arrive at. So your argument about, oh, this is an attack on Black people, no, this is a step in the right direction toward helping African Americans, because we're getting away from the idea that we have to create government help to get over the injustices of the past. That we've got to have a government program to help people overcome because they can't do it on their own. No, we are reaffirming their dignity as creatures of God. And we're telling them, yes, you can achieve. And we're going to treat you equally before the eyes of the Lord and before the eyes of the law. I think today's decision is a big step in the right direction. Are we to the complete point in this country of being a colorblind society? No. We're always going to be fighting that fight. But this goes a long way. I want to play one last part of Dr. King's speech, and he gets toward the end of it. He's talking about letting freedom ring. And I think it definitely has application to today. So I want to play this. Give me 1 second. It was almost 60 years ago, and just as relevant today as it was then. We have taken a step toward freedom ring. We have taken a step toward that day when all God's children, Black men, white men, will join hands and sing that spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. But that's what I think about it. As we start to wrap this up, please do me some favors. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number two, please leave a comment below. I've given you my opinion. I really want to hear yours. Number three, please share this video around to friends of yours. I'll take all the help I can get. And number four, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.